Hello, good morning, everyone. I trust you are doing very well. You are welcome to this channel. This is Tutorials with Francis. It's always a privilege and an honor, to come your way with these sessions. Before I start, to all those who have subscribed to the YouTube page, thank you very, very much. And to the very interesting comments that are coming through, those, requesting me to continue with the sessions. I appreciate your enthusiasm and your interest, shown in the tutorial. So the challenge has really been time constraint, but what we are doing now, what we'll be doing going forward is that we'll try and break the sessions down, say like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, so that we can have it as many as possible so that it won't have to take so much time. So what we are doing basically this morning is really just a revision of um the so just before I start, yes, I've already talked about this. If you just go subscribe to the YouTube page. Yes, my name, yeah, Francis Ohimianane is my name. I'm a lawyer by profession, and during my leisure time I do this, yeah, because I just love to teach. Sure. So like, follow, share, yeah. So yes, constitutional law. So for those that have already been following me, you would notice that I've already done a session on constitutional law. I think sessions 1 and 2, but I mean, this is a whole series that I am creating. So I decided to, start it all over again. So for this, it would really be more like a revision of what I said in that video. So I wouldn't be doing a lot of repetition. So if you haven't watched it, you can check on my page and you will see that, and then just enjoy. If you have any questions too, please feel free, just put it in the comment section. I will try and respond to it. You can also search me on other social media platforms. Not very active, but I'm sure I will see it and then try and respond to it. So we'll start with the history of constitutional. As I said, this is really a revision because I have a 2-hour session already on this. So I won't waste too much time on this. But all that I'm trying to do is that we want to start a new session just for tutorial with Francis. So we are beginning with this. So we'll just quickly go through. So in this session, we'll be looking at the pre-colonial era, we'll be looking at the colonial era, the post-colonial era. Okay, so for those who are now doing this, so when we talk about the pre-colonial era, we are essentially looking at the era before the advent of our colonial master, sorry, that is the British. But you would know that even before the British arrived at our shores, there were, so many foreign entities that had come to Ghana, and the very first is the Portuguese around the 1400s when they arrived at our Gold Coast. Of course, I mean, as at that time the name Gold Coast was not existing, but then they arrived at our shores, and after them a lot of them came, the Denmark, and all the Danes as you would see them in the literature, and a host of them all came, but the most prominent of all was the British colonial system that seemed to have captured the Gold Coast and all the other areas, and at the end of the day, bringing this country we know as one together. And as you would learn, the country Ghana that we have is actually more like a four slice of a pie, put together: the Gold Coast, the Ashanti, colony, the Volta Trust, and then you go up there, and then the Northern Protectorate. So that is how the Ghana that we have came together. But when the British arrived at our shores, they only started with the Gold Coast. So they actually named, that area Gold Coast. So that area Gold Coast was really, Accra, a bit of Eastern, and then a bit of Central. Yeah, that was really the Gold Coast that, we have. Good. So the pre-colonial era, we are just trying to see how the constitutional system was. Now, when I say the constitutional system, for those that are very new to this, all that we are trying to see is that how were the governance structure as at that time, how were they taking care of themselves, how were they ensuring law and order in the society. So that will be the pre-colonial, that is the era before the colonial masters came in. Then we have the colonial era, and the colonial era, we are just trying to understand how our colonial masters were governing us when they took, over the helms of affairs of the Gold Coast before extending it to the other, parts of the country. Then the post-colonial. So in the post-colonial, we are trying to understand how the governance structure was after they had left. And after they had left, we are essentially looking from, 1957, that is our independence, up until our republic, when they were almost out of our system, and then we started governing ourselves. How was the governance structure, as at that time? So that will be the post-colonial era, and the post-colonial era actually feeds into the independence. But you know that the independence is actually a big milestone, in the life of the country Ghana, because it was normally on 6th March, as we will be doing tomorrow, if I'm not too. No, as we'll be doing on Monday. Sorry, so today is I'm shooting this. I'm making this session on 4th March, yes. So as we'll be doing on Monday, which is 6th March. Now the whole idea of 6th March is just to celebrate the time when Ghana gained independence. But for those that know a little about the history of Ghana, or what independence and republic mean, the fact that we're independent did not necessarily mean that we're self-reliant, because even from 1957 to 1960, we still had the Queen as the head of state, with Kwame Nkrumah as the head of government. Now, these two are not the same. The head of state was more of a ceremonial, post of a sort. So, she would only show up for programs, just for independence, or for, I mean, anything ceremonial, anything that had, so maybe meeting other state officials, then the main person will be the Queen. But when it came to the day-to-day affairs of management of the state, ensuring that ministers are doing what they are supposed to do, it was the head of government. So Kwame Nkrumah was the head of government business, as you would see in other literature. Yes. Then the republic. So the republic was actually, which is normally for 1st July 1960. For those that do not know, good, but I'm sure you all know, because you've been celebrating it. Sure. So the republic essentially was a point when Ghana gained sovereignty, or Ghana became a sovereign state. A sovereign state meant that other states could not, impose their laws and then their dictates and their wishes on us. So we were sovereign. So more like when you are doing international public law, and these issues comes up because in the sovereign state, another sovereign state cannot impose their wills and wishes another sovereign state. So as I got, so that is why you can have certain criminals running into another sovereign state, and the other sovereign state would want these criminals, but they just cannot come and enter into the country and pick this criminal, because the criminal is now in the sovereign state. So it's now the duty of that other country, other sovereign state, to give this person up. You get it? So that is how the fact that the guy is a criminal Doesn't matter. So far as he's in another sovereign state, it is only up to that country to give him up. If that other country does not give him up, too bad, because these are sovereign states. So Ghana attained that, sovereignty on 1st July 1960. Guys, this is important. Then we have the infamous times in the life of the country Ghana on the many, military regimes, our very own, may his soul rest in peace, Rollins, and all the other guys, coming together. I say coming together here, coming and then, doing their bit for the state. It is not my business to, criticize anybody here. We are just, studying here. Then we'll talk about the third and fourth republic. You notice that the third and fourth republics are within the military, regimes. Good. So I'm sure this introduction really helps. Good. Now, so all that we are doing here is trying to understand our constitutional history. Now, this is very important, which I re-emphasize on the other video, is that we can only understand the future if we understand the past and the present. Now, if I'm even putting it more clearly, the present is actually a semblance of what happened in the past. So we can look at the present and you can see that there are traces of what is happening now that were shadows in the past. So by looking at the now, which will be the past in the future, we can actually start projecting what might happen in the future. So by studying constitutional law, by knowing what happened in the past, it helps us to appreciate certain things that are happening now, why our governance structure is the way it is, and what it would probably be. So if you really want to judge how the constitutional law systems and tactics will be in the future, try to be a student now, look at it now, see what the various political parties are, what are the various laws that are coming in, what do you think might change? I mean, would future generation want what we have now, or they may want to change? Because however bad or good of what we have now will determine what the future generation would want or not want. So the the issues of the past are always affecting the issues of the present, and the issues of the present will definitely affect matters in the future to come. So if you look at the constitution as we have now, you can see that some of the clauses and the provisions in there started way back in 1957, 1960, coming. So some of the provisions based on the happenings of back then, we see them, and some of the provisions were made as entrenched provisions. I'm sure as we go on, you know what we mean by entrenched and non-entrenched provisions. But for your benefit, I mean, entrenched provisions are really those provisions that cannot be changed easily. That cannot be changed easily. And then the entry, because such provisions are so important to the constitution that you would only need a referendum before they can be changed. And the non-entrenched provisions are the ones that can be changed easily. And some of the provisions are entrenched because of some of the things that happened in the past, or how important those provisions are. And for that reason, you just cannot be changing them easily, like provisions on the executive, provisions on the judiciary, provisions on the legislature. You cannot change them easily. No. So you cannot change the provisions on the executive and then come and say just any criminal can be, the president of Ghana, or any foreigner or non-citizen can be the president of Ghana. No, we cannot have that. So such provisions, before they will change, we will need a referendum, which is like a yes or no vote from everyone else to determine whether we need this provision changed or not. Good. So I think I've already said this. Yes, so I've already forgive me, right? I always try to explain before I even get there. So the Ghana that we have now did not exist before 1957, which by now you know. So the name Ghana before 1957 did not exist. It was at the time that our colonial masters were exiting that they decided to help us, bring us together. Now for me and from where I sit, I don't know how good of a work they did, but yes, so they decided to bring us together by pinning the various colonies together to give us one whole pie called Ghana. So normally they started with the Gold Coast colony, and the Gold Coast colony they occupied by settlement. What we mean is that when they arrived at our shores, they settled with the indigenous there, try to know. In fact, I mean, when you read the literature, they actually came in as merchants. They actually came in to propagate the gospel, so building schools. That is why you have a lot of Presbyterian Catholic schools all around, because that is how the whole thing started. They started propagating the gospel, but then they noticed that the language was a barrier, so they started building the schools, they started building the hospitals. Yes, so that is how the whole thing started. And then they noticed that, well, they can even actually be involved in the administration. Now, when you read most of the literature, the idea is that they illegally started administering their form of, government as at that time. And it seemed to have appeased, some of the Gold Coast folks, because especially the judicial system that was being dispensed by these British merchants and whatnot seemed to be better than what our chiefs were dispensing. So most of them started taking their issues to them, and then there were complaints by by some of the chiefs that the British guys, they were taking over their business. There was even a complaint written to the Queen in England, and then they said, "Hey, I think there's an opportunity here. Why don't we just go and then formalize this?" And normally, they would want to deceive us to say that the formalization started with the signing of the bond of 1844. The honest truth is that the chiefs at the time they were signing the bond of 1844 didn't know that they were surrendering their power to them. But what the bond of 1844 did was essentially to legalize the administration that they were dispensing as at that time. Because as you read the literature, it seemed that they were already administering the Gold Coast in some way, but then they just needed formal documents to legalize what they were doing. But I don't think the chiefs actually knew that that was what they were doing. So that's how they were able to, take over the Gold Coast. Now, with the Ashanti colony, it was actually conquered through, or it was brought into the fold through what we normally you see what we call a conquest in 1909. So you can talk of the intra-war, the Yasantua War. I mean, there were a number of wars that happened within that span, and that's how they were able to finally conquer the Ashantis, and then they brought them to the fold. Then we can talk about our northern brothers. I mean, those up there were actually facing a lot of pressure from the Germans, who were normally up there. So the idea was that they needed protection from foreign invasion. So then what the British guys were like, okay, fine, we will give you the protection, but if only you agree to be part of our fold, or you will agree for us to rule you. And that is how our northern territories came in. Then we have the Togoland under UK trusteeship. So let me try and explain it. And I think I said that in the other video, that you see that the boundaries between our folks at the Volta region now with the Bono, you see that now that that area has now been divided into certain parts. But before that, the Volta region that we had, almost the members of that Volta region actually have, and it's actually the truth, actually have brothers, sisters, husbands, and wives in Togo, because there was actually just one people living in peace there. But a bit of them were under Ghana, and then a bit of that was under Germany. But when Germany was conquered, it was then given out. So the idea was that It's either you are voting to join the new Ghana that is being formed, or you will join Togo as a country. Because I mean, it's just a group of, and the honest truth is that when you go there, it's actually just a group of people. I mean, you can have a wife living in Ghana and husband in Togo. I'm actually informed that it's actually a work. You just cross from Ghana to Togo, so they cross in and they out. I mean, that's just how it is. So you are either agreeing to be in Ghana or you are agreeing to be in Togo. So the idea was that you can either choose to be in Ghana or to join the new Ghana, I should say, or you were going to be with Togo. And this was done through a plebiscite. A plebiscite is a yes or no vote. It's a yes or no vote. So it was a trusteeship because the UK was supposed to take over, that area. They were more like they were trustees because that area initially was being, governed by German, and then they lost the war. So it was shared actually between the British and then the French. So the French took over Togo, and then the British took over Ghana. So that's how you see the UK in what we normally say the trusteeship. So the plebiscite happened, and then in 1956, we had that part of the voter region joining Ghana, those that decided to join Ghana. Good. I said a revision, but I seem to be doing the whole thing again. Good. So in the pre-colonial era, how was the governance structure? So for the executive, for those that do not know, let me take some few minutes to explain this. The executive are involved in the day-to-day management of the state. The legislature are responsible for making the laws. So legislature, they manage the state day-to-day management. Legislature, sorry, the executive day-to-day management. Legislature, they make the laws, and then the judiciary, more like the enforcement of the laws. Well, when I say enforcement of the laws, let me leave it there, but then I will explain, what I mean by that. Because let me just say it. A judge may pass sentence on you, but the honest truth is that it is up to the police officer to push you to the prisons officer who would rather lock you in there. So the enforcement of the law bit is actually a bit stretched. But of course, the courts are there to to interpret and to enforce the laws. But then when they are done enforcing the laws, they actually need the other person to ensure that what they are saying is actually obeyed. So at the time, at the pre-colonial era, the executive power was vested in the chiefs. So the chiefs were managing the day-to-day affairs, and with the assistance of the elders, and then with the Asafo groups. Well, normally you don't. Well, I think around Accra during the Homowo and their festival, you see the Asafo groups, here and there. Yeah, so they are not really outdated as much, but they're not powerful as they used to be. Because back in the days, the Asafo days were powerful. I was not there yet, but it was powerful. Then the legislature, same power was vested in the chiefs. So the chiefs made the laws with the help of the elders and also the representatives of the tribes and then the clans. So the Asona, Oyoko, Bretu, Ediana, all those clans, they had, heads who were all part, in making the laws. That's how it was. And then so for the judiciary, same, the chief and then the elders, they serve as judge. And I'm sure we see this in many of the local movies there, where you see that the chief will be sitting in the middle, and then with the elders, sitting around him. And then sometimes you see family heads, they bring in the accused person, and the family head speaks on behalf of the accused person, either pleading with the chief and then the elders to forgive him. Maybe it's a first time offender or blah blah, yeah, as we see in the movie. So that's how the system was. But let me just add that during at this time, the system was a bit characterized as corruption ridden and unfair. And this led to the thriving of the colonial justice system. And I've already mentioned this because people could just take a sheep or a goat or a cow, to just go and unfortunately bribe some of the elders to speak the matter in their favor, some of the elders were related to certain persons. So when they came, there were big bias in their judgments or not. But the British justice system seemed to be fair, because you had a judge who you didn't know, who tried as much as possible to be very fair to them. So most of the local folks started, engaging in the, British justice system instead of our justice system, which is the what the chiefs and the elders were dispensing. And this was one of the, bits that, led to the British realize that, well, yes, I think we can actually do something. Why don't we, take over the administration? And that's so it was just part of it. Good. And the colonial, let me see, is my I'm trying very hard not to okay, let me finish the colonial era so that I can just end it. So on the colonial era, essentially we are looking at now that the British rule was in force, the bond of 1844 had been passed. They had made laws saying we are supposed to avoid pioneering barbarous activities. So pioneering, for those that don't know, was actually the practice where people could actually sell their relatives, especially for those that were involved in criminal activities. They could actually sell them into slavery. So if someone was arrested for stealing or for committing any heinous crimes, like maybe rape, murder, those not so those bad, our crimes not even bad. I mean, but for the first degree offense, let me put it that way, yes, they were sold into slavery. So you notice that, yes, in as much as we can be blaming our colonial masters for commercializing slavery and all that, our chiefs and some of our people were actually part. If you read some of the literature, you will know that we also encourage them. We did not really discourage them as now we would want everybody to believe, because we're also involved when we were there, because we're selling these criminals as slaves to them. Yes, so the bond of 1844 was to stop these acts like human sacrifice, those barbarous acts, and all that. Yes, but essentially what it ended up doing was to legalizing the British rule in the Gold Coast. Good. Yes, I think I've already talked about it, that they actually started at merchants. They started at people coming to propagate the gospel, and then more came. They realized that, well, there's a lot of gold in this small island, and then more of them started coming in, and then it became what it was. I've already talked about this point, that it was corruption raiding. Good. So yes, I think I have to really talk about all this. That the bond of 1844 was only to legalize an illegal act, and the chiefs at the time didn't even know that they were, surrounding their authority. So from the Gold Coast, they decided to extend their, territory to other colonies, and I've already explained that by conquest, Ashanti, by providing protection to those in the north, and by the plebiscite at Togoland, that is the before voter region, and then Togo. So some of the constitutional documents at that time were the orders in council, royal charters, letters patent, and the royal instruction. Of course, all these things are no more. But back then, these were some of the letters that So all these were just documents they were receiving either from the Queen or the Privy Council or the National Assembly in the UK on how they were supposed to, govern us. So guys, I hope this revision was helpful. I'll try as much as possible to be doing this daily and to make it as snappy as possible, because that's the only way I can keep this thing going. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a question, you can always put it in the chat. I will do my very well to answer to it. Thank you and have a blessed day. Bye. And if you haven't subscribed, please do.